Welcome to Slingshot 25 Shotcast, a series of bite-sized podcasts that will feel like an espresso shot to your brain. I'm Jackie.
I'm Courtney.
Something that we've been thinking about is job loss.
Yeah, so when it comes to change, we are always paying attention to losses, and one of the most, rightfully so, right, emotionally triggering losses is job loss. Whether it's real or perceived, like rumors spread through your organization and people, any change almost, like we've upgraded the coffee system. I wonder if it's going to result in a job loss. Like people jump there very quickly because our jobs are so fundamental to our survival. And so what we want to do today is dig into that, like real or perceived. There are actually people that are losing their jobs, have lost their jobs. It's been happening forever. And dig into like what actually happens. And if you're that person, like, should you end up in that place, what are some things to think about and how do you help yourself through that?
Yeah. Well, the place that I would start is just thinking about what are some of the conditions that you're experiencing. Like if you find yourself in this situation, let's just name a couple of things that are probably going on for you. One is what we call just a stress response. And of course, there's a stress response. This ranks as one of the highest stress-producing factors in our, in human lives.
Other than giving a speech, right behind giving a speech, right? Public speaking.
Well, and snakes.
And snakes.
So the stress response, and no joke about that. Like you are obviously, and it would make perfect sense that you would be very concerned about your finances, the state of your career, like what happens to your career ambitions. Maybe you were on some sort of a career track, and just feeling out of control of a really important part of your life. So just a good old, stress response, both physically, mentally, and even spiritually. You may feel in crisis, lots of exhaustion sort of creeping in the form of a stress response. The other thing that is really likely to happen and totally understandable is what we call a negative evaluation of self, which is basically just another way of saying, I don't feel good enough. Like I am not good enough. I lost my job because I'm not good enough. It's a story that you can easily start to tell yourself. And you can also start to tell yourself, like you open this, Courtney, by saying job loss has been happening forever. People have been getting, caught up in layoffs and for a long time. But it's really easy to start to tell ourselves the story that for some reason, we are the ones that aren't going to be okay. We won't rebound. I'm going to be the one that just doesn't make it. And that can start to really seep into a negative evaluation of yourself.
And it is, it's embarrassing, right? It triggers shame. Like it's just normal that when we've lost our jobs, it is very, very hurtful because we wonder what people are going to think of us. We are embarrassed by that. We have all these things. And so it's very easy and understandable that we go to this place of saying, I'm not good enough.
Absolutely. So the first thing I would love to say to you is you are good enough.
There's nothing wrong with you.
Nothing wrong with you. And so you're sitting there in that place, and we can all imagine it. And many of us have been there. But we can all imagine that. Just being in this place of not feeling good enough and it's not going to be okay for me. And as if that's not bad enough, you then have a lot of things start to come at you that are just really not helpful. And I'm going to name two of them, and then I'd like to hear your thoughts on these, Courtney. The first one is this thing that I call cruel optimism. And it's almost self-explanatory if you sit and think about what that means, is a lot of people, and sometimes even yourself, your own self-talk, but a lot of people coming at you with this idea of, just smile and it's going to be okay, or just, do some, resilience training, or work on your positivity, or, sit and do some self-compassion. Like, yeah. And that's, all of that is like, that's not, all of that work isn't going to get you another job.
No.
In and of itself.
It's not terribly helpful.
It's not terribly helpful. So that's the first thing that I would be aware of. The second beware is beware of comparative suffering. And you see comparative suffering, it looks like this. All sentences that are talking about comparative suffering start with the words, well, at least, right? At least you I don't know, live in America where there's, other opportunities or something. And we tend to want to compare the suffering that we're having, which we can sometimes call it like a first world problem or something like that. We start to compare it to, it could be so much worse, and not helpful to us in this moment.
Yeah, and these things aren't helpful because when you have an experience, you've lost your job, or something that you think's more trivial, you're late for work, or that your kids, because either I just need to be positive, like skip over it, or someone else has got it worse, and so therefore their worse experience means I'm not entitled to mine. And the reason that we want you to like draw attention to these thought patterns and these behaviors is both of them. The things that's the same about both of them is they allow you to skip over your experience. So when you are hurt, when you are embarrassed, when you are ashamed, you are having a human experience that when you skip and say, oh, I'll just put a smiley face on it, or you skip and say, well, I'm not entitled to that because someone else has it worse, you actually don't process that emotion. And it doesn't go away, right? You bury it, or you carry it around, or anger is my go-to emotion, so I rip somebody's head off later because I'm upset about that thing. And because I skipped over my humanness, I didn't give myself permission to be human, I'm actually hurting myself in a deeper way than if I had just said, you know what, this sucks right now. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't matter what's happening to anybody else. I'm sad, I'm disappointed, I'm hurt, I'm mad, and I give myself permission to be human. Then I can start to burn those things off. I can experience those and go through those emotions. I'm entitled to them, right? Something traumatic happened. I lost my job. I'm scared. And that's normal. There's nothing wrong with you, and you need to, the more we can give ourselves space to be human, the faster we can actually move through some of these very difficult things.
Yeah, I love it. So that's what we call like the inner work of doing the sort of the self-reflection and knowing what's going on for you. And we mentioned, though, that you have to be careful that you don't see that as the end-all, be-all response or answer to where you're at. You also need, and let's be really clear about this, you also need a lot of just really pragmatic action. Actions like connecting to your network, working on your resume, thinking about any new skill training you might need. So the inner work has got to be accompanied by what we'll call like outer work, environmental work, the work of your environment, the work of pragmatically making things better. Where are your chronic stressors coming from? If you need to take a truthful look at your finances right now and work some things out around budget and do that work.
And it's so important. Like one of our most used phrases in change management is action breaks anxiety. And so it is overwhelming. When you lose your job, it affects every part of your life, your relationships, your finances, where you live, who you spend your time with. And so just make a pragmatic list. What are things I can do? Because those things that you do are going to help you move forward, but they're also going to reduce your anxiety, make you healthy, make you feel better, and get you moving, your energy trending in a direction that's healthy and helpful.
Yeah, that's right. I love that. Action breaks anxiety. The last thing that I'll say about this is, and maybe it's not as evident to you, might not come up right away, but one of a really important piece of advice for you here is to stay generous and forgiving. A generous and forgiving.
Right after you're mad.
You can be mad also.
First.
That's right. But to come back to and to find a path to a spirit of generosity and a spirit of forgiveness. Because if you hang on to resentment, if you hang on to grievance, those things are easy to nurture, and they love your nurturing. Oh boy, does resentment and grievance love to be nurtured, and they will grow beautifully under your nurturing. But they will also poison you.
Yeah.
I will often say that the best definition of resentment I've ever heard is like drinking poison and hoping someone else dies. It is not good for you. It will keep you in a bad headspace. It will get you to make bad decisions for yourself that are not helping you out of your situation. Yep. So work your way back to practice being in a space of generosity and forgiveness.
And they really go together. If you skip over the honest emotions you have, you will not have the capacity for the generosity and forgiveness. You have to actually be mad first and give yourself permission to do that so that space is available to you.
I love it. Well, that's all for this episode of our Shotcast, but we always have a lot more to say, and if you want more, drop us a line at slingshot25.com. Until next time.